Hello and welcome back to the Point and Laugh podcast with your hosts
Skyler
and Kaylynne. Are we doing another? Ooh, up top. Oh fuck! my hand got all wrapped up in the various chords we have.
I threw one curveball at you and you're like, oh god.
This wasn't what I expected.
Fake right and break left.
Wait, why are my chords like that? Wait, hold on while I do some chord management. This is ridiculous.
You know what you look like right now? You look like the people in the 60s with the big headphones, or like the 40s that had to like
Oh,
who are you trying to call?
Oh, the
operator.
Yeah.
And then they'd have to Pina. I don't know why my voice turned full into Lois Griffin. They had to like physically put the chord in. They're like, you trying to call? How did that work?
I literally was about to say, I'm like, I don't understand how that works.
And then we just stopped doing it. And I'm like, how does calling work now?
What do you mean?
Well, I feel like if I am...
I don't think I know how it
Here's
really
the thing.
works.
I am such a stupid bitch that if you walk into any modern like convenience and it'd be like, how does this work? I'd be like, don't know. Like, I don't know how Bluetooth works. I don't know how electricity works.
Does?
I don't know how cell phones call. I don't know how internet. I don't know an algorithm.
I just know signals, towers, and everyone has a specific number.
You're more. I'm essentially, if you like unthawed a caveman, and you're just like, here you go.
Here you go. Drink of the day, a Dr. Pepper, 0 sugar. Oh my god, wait, my nails. Oh! That was a good one.
Better fucking cheers me.
Oh, sorry. Oh my god. Sorry.
It didn't make any noise, but we both have cans of delicious soda.
My sody. Okay.
You're gonna regret that. You're gonna edit this and you're gonna flinch.
No, I'll delete it. No.
You're a coward.
I probably won't. So in case anyone is wondering how my week is going, first of all, this has felt like the longest week of my entire fucking life, and we'll get into that. However, I did on Friday, I was like, I'm going to use my lunch break, and I'm now fully remote at my job, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
But we still do like lunch meetings and stuff, but like we don't have an office space anymore. So, it's
like
nice.
At all?
We don't have an office space, or we do, but it's like they're keeping the New York office, but they're getting rid of the LA office because we like really don't use it. And so on my lunch break, I was like, I'm going to go for a little hike. Like, I'm going to go on a hike. I invited my roommate along. We went on a little hike. I did decide to go on the hike, like, immediately after I finished my therapy session.
Oh, God.
So
you had something to prove?
Yeah, cheeks were puffy and, like, eyes were bloodshot. And I was like, Taylor, are you ready to go? But it was a lovely time. There's, like, this very specific hike that I go on because it's the only one that's kind of, like, close-ish to where I live, and there's this like path I usually go on, and there's a fork in the road, and you can take
the road less traveled by.
Yeah, you can take either one. And the last time I went on it, I took one side. Like I went on one side, and it is so fucking steep. Like, it is so steep. It feels like when you're going down, you're gonna twist your ankle at any moment. And then going up, it feels like you literally have to like climb up the fucking, like if you fall down, you're fucked. You're literally fucked. Like it's so steep.
And you went here voluntarily?
And yeah.
Of your own free will?
Well, because I'm like, I like hiking because if you're halfway through and you're like, oh my fucking God, I don't want to do this anymore, you still have to turn around and like finish it. So, which that sounds like a very negative thing, but like, I don't know. I feel like sometimes if I'm like working out at home and I like don't want to do something, I'll just stop. And then later I'll be like, well, you could have pushed yourself. Like, you could have done more. So with a hike, it's like, you have to like turn around and finish it.
So if I strand myself, I am forced to then crawl my way out of the predicament I've made myself get in.
Literally. So anyway, we were like, well, let's take the other path. Let's see what the other path has in store for us. So we take the other path. We're walking down. The path is narrowing. Their grass is growing over. Like, there's still a path, but it's much less clear. We're kind of like climbing through branches and everything. We're like, okay, this is interesting. All of a sudden, I feel a sharp pain on the back of my leg. And I'm like, what the fuck? And then I hear Taylor yelp. She's like, ah! And I'm like, oh no. And she's like, oh my God, I think something just stung me. And I'm like, what? Ow! Another fucking, sorry, that was so loud. Another sting in my leg. and another one. And then I look down at my feet, and there is a swarm of wasps at my feet. And they are pissed. They are pissed. I think I might have accidentally stepped on their nest.
I don't know. The wasps' nests aren't in the ground, are they?
That I don't know. Yeah, which I'm a little like, okay, your fucking fault for building your nest on the ground, like on a path.
Get evolutionized smarter, man.
Literally.
Next time.
But so I did get stung by 8 wasps. Actually, it could have been the same one. I got 8 stings. And I have not been stung by anything literally since I was like 5, and that was also a wasp. So I've never gotten stung by a bee, only wasps. Which
Want to knock on some wood?
Well, I'm fucked. there's none around.
Knock on my head. Thank you.
So that's how my Friday went. I got stung by 8 wasps.
Serves you fucking right for exercising, Kaylynne.
And then
I'm safe because I'm the Pillsbury Doughboy up in my mansion of dark. You know how you don't get stung by wasps? You don't go outside.
Don't go outside. Checkmate,
liberals.
Yeah. But then I had to go home and finish working. So, so that was wonderful. And then, yesterday I discovered...
Oh, God.
Yesterday I discovered, that I now have 2 exes who live in LA.
One of them is me. The lore deepens.
I would like to say 2 out of 3. And the third one doesn't live in LA anymore because he just moved. So, that means 2 out of my 3 exes. I would also like to say all of these exes I met and dated before I moved to LA.
They're so obsessed with you.
Like, they all lived...
They're chasing it.
They all lived in different spots. They literally all lived in different states. And... Which also, now that I'm thinking about it, this... In all likelihood, they were all in LA at the same point in time, like, a couple weeks ago, probably.
They all hung out behind your back and they didn't say anything. They have, like, a Kaylynne X fan club.
So at one point in time, all 3 of my exes were probably in LA at the same time. And I'm just a little annoyed because I was literally talking to my roommate Taylor about this the day before. I was talking to her about this on Friday. And I was like, oh my God, it's so nice to have to have my exes live in different states because I never have to worry about running into them. The next day, I was looking up all my exes on Instagram. We all do it. And that's how I found out. And I'm just pissed, frankly. I'm fucking pissed because I'm like, I thought I avoided this. I literally thought I avoided this by moving across the country. I would never have to worry about running into them. Lo and behold, the majority of them moved out here. I did text my friends from home about it, and they were like, Kaylynne, you're just so magnetic.
That's what I'm saying.
They just all they all moved out here for the chance, nay, the opportunity to reconnect.
And I believe it.
Yeah. But speaking of I am going through a breakup. Feel bad for me. No, I'm kidding.
I won't.
Of literally a week. We literally broke up last Saturday. And you're probably thinking, Kaylynne, why are we talking about this?
The thought has occurred. I'm angling myself further away from you, distance wise on the couch, because I'm like, what's up? Yeah. You're like, that's why I brought a gun. I'm gonna cause mayhem on camera.
You're like, why are we talking about this? It's only been a week. How are you doing?
I did the same thing. Remember when I was going through something similar, and you're like, what about it?
Scared. Fear has entered the room. I'm doing surprisingly well. And I think I'm at such a stage of growth in my life where I'm really at a place where I can appreciate and embrace the change and growth that's inevitable with a breakup. So I've really been kind of working through it with that framework of embracing the change and growth and embracing new opportunities to come. So I feel like that has definitely helped. I also feel like it helps that it was a planned breakup. Like, we literally knew for over a month that we were going to break up because he was moving. So it was a very like amicable breakup, and we left things, you know, with a lot of love and respect for each other. So I definitely feel like that's a better situation to be in, and probably a better, or like an easier situation to process than when
being dumped.
Yeah, then when a breakup comes out of nowhere and you have like all these unanswered questions and things are left, you know, very negatively. So I feel like in my situation, I was able to get a lot of closure, which I think a lot of times in breakups can be the most difficult part, is when you feel like there's no closure and you have all these whys. I don't really have a lot of like whys. So I feel like that's why it's maybe been easier for me to process. But also at the same time, I almost felt like because we had left things with so much love for each other that like I wasn't feeling enough. I wasn't distraught enough because I had just lost someone who I loved. And the fact that I was like feeling okay after day 3, I was kind of like, what the fuck is wrong with me? Like I was like, am I a cold-hearted bitch? Like why do I feel fine? Like, why do I feel okay? And literally, okay, so my TikTok did clock me. I watched one video that was like, listen to this if you're going through a breakup. And I was like, oh my God, yeah.
The algorithm is like, interesting.
Literally. So then, like, every other TikTok on my For You page became breakup videos.
I liked one audio, but like, haha, look, it's the bitch who likes someone who doesn't like her back. And for like a month, my TikTok was like, did like the fucking sad girl audios where it's like dun, 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 dun. I just thought that maybe, you know, we had something. I guess I was wrong. And I was like, TikTok, what's happening?
What is this?
I don't want to feel like this. That's mean.
What is this? Yeah, no, the TikTok algorithm is very mean.
That's the heartless bitch.
That TikTok is the heartless. We all knew this. But so I was like watching all of these videos, and literally like none of them spoke to me in any meaningful way. Like I feel like so much of the advice they were giving was like, you're gonna feel, you know, X, Y, and Z for a long time, and that's okay. And that like didn't resonate with me because I wasn't really feeling those things. You know, there were like a couple things here and there for the most part, but like, or there were a couple things here and there, but for the most part, I didn't really like relate to these other women's experiences with healing from a breakup. And I was really worried that like I wasn't processing things correctly because I felt like I wasn't being emotional enough, like I wasn't devastated enough. And all these people were saying, you know, it might feel like you're gonna feel this way forever, but time heals all wounds, or you might feel like no one could ever love you the same way, but I promise you, like, you will experience that again. And I was watching these and I was kind of like, yeah, like no shit, like duh. Which like I feel very lucky to feel that way, because I do think it often takes people a really, really long time to like feel that way. Yeah.
Raise your hand. Raise your flippers.
And it's funny because I was talking to, obviously, first of all, like everyone grieves differently. Like obviously there's like no correct or like wrong way of grieving, but I really feel like it's hard when you have all of this like content and media, and even the people around me. Like I was talking to my roommate who went through a breakup a couple months ago, and I was talking to her and I'm like, I feel like I'm doing something wrong because like I'm not reacting the same way you did, or like I'm not like as emotional as you were. And she's like, well, I'm just an emotion, like that's how I get my feelings out, is I cry. Like that's how I process things. And I'm much more someone who like rationalizes things in my head, so I think that, you know, has something to do with it anyway.
I mean, the situation was also really different. Also.
Yeah,
the situations will help.
They were very different. Yeah. As said, I think when you have proper closure, I think it really, really helps a lot. Mm-hmm. And don't worry, guys. I know you were so scared that I wasn't going to bring it up in yet another episode. But I'm a Virgo.
No.
So, like, the main way that I process things is by rationalizing them in my head. And whether it's something good or something bad that happens to me, I feel like I have to be able to find the meaning or the purpose in it in order to make sense of it. And that's kind of how I process things. And sometimes that meaning is literally just like, if that never happened, I wouldn't be who I am today. But the meaning or purpose that I found in my breakup is that I think me and that person just had incompatible lifestyles. Like, it didn't matter, you know, how much we loved each other, how compatible our personalities were, or whether I moved somewhere or he moved somewhere else. Like, it kind of felt like the breakup was inevitable anyway, just because we had much different ways of living our lives. And that doesn't mean that, like, I'm a better person than him or he's a better person than me in any ways. Just like we had different lifestyles. And I think that offered a lot of closure for me too, because it almost felt like it was something unavoidable. So it didn't really feel like, well, what could I have done differently, or what could he have done differently, or like this, and this. It just kind of felt like, no, we're just growing apart in that way. Like we just have different ways of living our life, and we're incompatible in that way. And I want to be with someone who I am compatible with in that way. So I feel like that definitely makes it a lot easier as well. And I will say I'm very thankful that it came at a time where we both love and respected each other, rather than if we continued the relationship and got to a point of like conflict and resentment. I'm also an eternal optimist, which I will say I wasn't always. It's definitely like a practice that I have tried, that I've like really had to kind of rewire. I really had to like rewire my brain and like really practice that muscle of optimism. But when people would say those things, like it might feel like you're going to feel this way forever, or you might feel like no one could ever love you the same way. Those things felt very obvious to me. And I hope this doesn't like come off as me being a cold, heartless bitch, but like, yeah, no shit. I'm a little like, the world will continue to spin. Life will move on, and I'm going to take all of the wonderful things I learned from this relationship on to the next, and I'll be able to look back at this point in my life and understand why everything was meant to happen this way. And even now, a week out, I feel like I already kind of understand why everything like happened in the way that it did. And yeah, all of that to say, if a breakup were to happen at any time in my life, I'm glad it's now, because I feel like I am at a really great place in my life. I have a lot of amazing friendships. I'm feeling, pretty confident in myself and like pretty sure of myself. Like I'm definitely in a really, really good place to like be going through this, which absolutely helps as well. And while I was in that relationship, I really made an effort to build a life for myself outside of that relationship. I maintained my own hobbies, my own interests, friendships, so that way when we did break up, I had a really strong foundation to fall back on. I think if you're in a relationship where so much of your identity and your daily routine is wrapped up in that other person, if you break up, that loss is going to feel so much more devastating, because not only are you grieving that relationship, which is difficult, but you're grieving the life that you had. And now you're in a position where in order to move on from that grief, you have to completely rebuild your life, which is fucking hard to do, especially when you're sad all the time. Like, that's definitely not the time where you're like, oh my God, I'm going to completely like change my life and rebuild.
I can cut my hair though. That's fast. Yeah. I can dye it red and get bangs. That's something that can happen today, right now.
That's so easy. I was going to do an episode. This was a while ago. I was going to do an episode on like grieving and loss and like breakup haircuts basically, and like why it's kind of a common trend for people who are like going through emotional turmoil to like make drastic changes to their hair. But then I did the episode, and really there's only one reason for it, and it's for a like false sense of control. It's because it's a really easy thing that you can control, and you can like very easily, chop all your hair off and be like, oh my God, it's a new me. Like, that's easy. But then, obviously like you're not dealing with the emotional stuff. You're just changing something.
It's superficial.
Yes. But anyway, now that I'm in this new chapter of my life, I'm at a place where like I really want to focus on me. And just to give like a brief history of my dating life, yes, everyone applaud. I'm a serial monogamist. And
I'm a serial killer. Announced.
But I haven't really been meaningfully single literally since I was 17 when I got into my first relationship.
That's when you're hot, Kaylynne. That's what happens when you're hot, Kaylynne.
That's what happens when you don't work on yourself and you rely on external validation.
We said the same thing, Kaylynne.
To fulfill your emotional needs. That's what's happened. But yeah, I haven't really been meaningfully single since I was 17. And I've basically spent the last 5 years of my life hopping from like one relationship to the next. I think the longest amount of time that I've stayed single between relationships was like 2.5 months. And these were like year-long, like they were long-term relationships. So like that's not a lot of time in between. And I've definitely reflected back on that. And I think luckily I've been able to reflect back on that, like while being in a relationship and kind of being able to, like I said before, like do that work. I think I've done a really good job of focusing on like bettering myself and doing that work while I'm in a relationship. Like I don't think you necessarily have to be single to like work on yourself. Yeah, so I've basically spent the last 5 years of my life like hopping from one relationship to the next, and I definitely feel like my friendships have suffered because of that. Not to say that like I haven't been able to form and maintain meaningful friendships, because clearly
who me?
I have.
Whomst me?
But I definitely feel like my bonds with my friends maybe aren't as intimate as they might have been had I been single, like while forming those. So let me explain. Romantic and platonic relationships can both carry the same level of emotional intimacy, but often when you end up in romantic relationships, you focus all of your emotional intimacy within that one relationship, and you can kind of close yourself off unknowingly emotionally to your friends, especially if you're forming new friendships while already in a relationship, because you're kind of like, well, that aspect of my emotional needs are already fulfilled, so I don't need someone else. I don't need to put that on someone else. Like I already have someone who's fulfilling that. So I definitely found myself not opening up as much or not allowing myself to be as vulnerable with my friends because I already had someone who I was vulnerable with. Whenever I had something on my mind or something was weighing on me, I would open up about it to my partner, and then I wouldn't even think about speaking about it to my friends, because by the time I saw them, I'd already worked through it. You know, I'd already talked to someone about it. I didn't need to talk to anyone else about it. So I had no emotional need to open up to my friends because that role had already been filled. So as I enter this new era of my life, I am really, really trying to focus on decentering men for my life and focus on my female friendships, and really allowing myself to be open and vulnerable and allowing my emotional needs to be fulfilled through friends and family rather than through a romantic relationship. Because again, like that's what I've been doing the past 5 fucking years. And I've even noticed that like, I feel like a lot of people look back on maybe their like middle or high school, you know, friendships, and they're kind of like, why do I feel like I'm like, you know, I have friends in my 20s or whatever, but it's not the same. Like, I don't feel as close to them as I did, like, when I was in high school or when I was in school with these people, or, like, it feels harder to, like, maintain that emotional intimacy. And obviously one part is that you're probably not seeing them as often. Like, when you're in school, you're literally seeing that person every single day. But I also think, at least for me, a big part was when I was forming those friendships in high school, I wasn't in a relationship. So I had to rely on them for my emotional needs. And I think that really does help bring people closer. I also want to use this time. This is just, by the way, this is Kaylynne's therapy episode. If that wasn't clear,
Skyler's had enough of these. It's your turn.
It's my turn. If that wasn't clear already, I am gonna go into like the history of friendship, which is kind of cool.
Ooh.
But for now, it's about me, and everyone gets to listen because I'm going through a breakup, so it is allowed. I can only pull that card so many times, so I'm gonna milk it while I can. But I really want to use this time to like become the best version of myself. I already feel like I'm at a good place in my life, so I'm at a really strong starting point, which is awesome. But I want to get to a point where I'm just so sure of myself, and I'm not seeking external validation or feeling jealousy or resentment towards others for things outside of my control. So I'm going to read a little excerpt from my journal. It's literally just a list, but I went through, this was literally like day 3 of the breakup, and I was like, no, I'm really going to like thoughtfully use this time to like, for myself. And I wrote down a list of traits and habits that I see the best version of myself having like I really looked at it from like, who do I want to grow up to be? Who is the person in 5-10 years, like, that I want to be? Who does that look like? What are the traits that they have? What are the habits that they have? Like, what are the things that you can actively do? And these are all things that like I can control. You know, I'm not going to be like, I wish she has a small nose. Like, you know, it's going to be things that like are within my control, so that I have something tangible to really aspire to. So here's my little list.
Not the cat journal.
Yes, it was a gift. So what does the best version of myself do? Who is she? She compliments strangers. She lives an active lifestyle. She uses social media sparingly and mindfully, aka not doom scrolling. She reads. She creates! ! She's vulnerable with her friends. She radiates positivity. She consumes art by mindfully listening to music. Goes to museums, smiley face. Seeks out craft and art fairs. She feels confident and sexy. She journals often. She's fulfilled with herself and her friends. I am fulfilled by my friends. I just want to say that. This is not me saying I'm unfulfilled. Some of the things on the list, like, I feel like I already do, or like I'm actively working towards. So
it's like when you make like a to-do list and then you above the first bullet
literally.
point, right? Well, you've already done that way. You can cross it off and be like, oh, I'm halfway there.
You're like, yeah. She does things by herself, goes on little self dates. She embraces the absurdity of life with fearlessness. Kind of popped off Pinterest. With that one. She seeks out learning opportunities. She reaches out to family with vulnerability. That's another thing. I feel like I like really don't open up to my family sometimes. She cooks creative dishes. She stays hydrated. She's generous but not taken advantage of. She doesn't seek external validation. She starts her morning with a walk. I have not been doing that, but whatever. She shares her thoughts without fear or judgment. She appreciates the beauty in simplicity and embraces change and growth with courage. So this is me openly stating that this is the person I want to be. So if you see or hear me doing anything that's contradictory to these things, call me out. Because
excuse me, your alarm just went off and I couldn't help but notice that you are not currently like healed pavement right now.
You are not embracing change with courage.
Where's your conviction?
So that's about me. So now I really want to get into this article that I found from the Atlantic. It's such a good article, and frankly, I'm like kind of reading like half of it, or I like reworded half of it. So but you should read the whole article. It's really, really good. I like was reading it and I was like, oh my god, yes. But it's an article from the Atlantic titled "What If Friendship Not Marriage Was at the Center of Life?" It's by Raina Cohen. It's a really great article that talks about intimate adult friendships and how historically society's perception of like these types of friendships have shifted throughout the years. Today we kind of live in a society that expects our romantic partners to be number one in our life always. And of course, you know, like you're expected to have friends as well, but your priority is always supposed to be your partner through and through. Historically, though, this wasn't always the case, which is interesting.
Well, sorry. No, I didn't.
Some of us didn't know.
No. Sorry, that was not me. I totally realize now how much of a bitch that sounded. No, that's just because, listen, please hear me out. I'm sweating already. That's just because because I came at it from like a more of like a historical perspective, is that like marriage being based in romance is not necessarily like... Yeah. Most of what the history of marriage has been. Yes. A lot of marriage has been like, if you have like if you have a partner in life, it's like, and now you are secured. You have now secured land. You have secured wealth. You have secured a future for you and your children. Now you can fill your days with people that actually matter. Yes. So I didn't mean to like shit all over this thing that you just said was like really impaired. But you're right. In modern day context, once we've kind of centered romantic like as like the reason to get married, which is like only like for a while it started becoming like a bold new idea around like like Jane Austen. Yeah. But like before then it was very much like, yeah, well of course you're married. It's like, I don't love her. Okay.
Yeah, it's like
love pairings were not the thing. Yeah, but it's important. Yes, sorry. I just
no, you're fine. No, that was so
funny.
I'm
just like thoughtful, and then I'm like, yeah, what, you
like,
stupid bitch? You're like, I am no longer centering female friendships in my life anymore.
I am recentering men. So in the period,
in the
beginning, there were female friendships. In the period spanning from the 18th to the early 20th centuries, passionate and devoted same-sex friendships thrived. These relationships were often called romantic friendships to express the nature of the emotional intimacy that was involved. And I loved, there's so many like little tidbits throughout this article of just like women throughout history and like how they've expressed like their love and adoration for their friends. And every single time I'm just like, I love women. I love when women. But American and European women would write each other meaningful letters, and they would address it to my love or my queen. My queen.
Small note.
Oh my god.
What?
Sorry. No, go ahead.
Now it's your turn to shit on me. No, genuinely, it's so hard because like on the one hand, like this this is true that like I mean I say I love you all the time. Mm-hmm. You are my love. Mm-hmm. And it's true. But it's just, it's on the one hand, it's like, yes, correct. That is always like women just love each other so much. But on the other hand, it is giving a little bit of historian, like, and they were good friends. But I do, however, it always is really tricky. Especially because like, you know, I was the historical nerd. I was the American girl. Okay. It's always really hard to contextualize like lesbian relationships, even like gay relationships in the past, because like the contexts were always just so different, and what we consider to be queer now was not necessarily queer then, but at the same time it very much could have. And the thing about history is like it's only ever really recorded by the period of the time, so a lot of times if you're looking through history through a modern lens, you're really you're only getting half the picture. So on the one hand, it's like, yes, it was like very common for like female friendships were the reason that you thrive, because that's the only community that you were allowed to have as a woman. And like I'm sure that lesbians were fucking thriving too, and it's so hard to like now decipher like, wait, was she gay? And the historians are like, I don't know.
Yes, and I will say this article does state that they do kind of go in there. Basically what they say is that of course you can like I guess like skepticize on what did and didn't happen, you know, in the boudoir,
the bedchambers.
But there is no like evidence in a lot of these scenarios that anything like deeper than a platonic relationship was happening. Now, of course, that could just be because that's not what's being recorded, because that wasn't allowed. But it could also be that like friendships were just thought of as different. So it is difficult to decipher what is what, and it could be a combination of both. You know, I think it's very likely that like some of these relationships, they probably did have romance involved, and other relationships they might not have. But so it's you're totally right. It's difficult to decipher what is what. I just realized I spelled friendship incorrect.
You're like, I want to center it. What the fuck is it called?
I didn't put a D. It was just friendship. But a lot of this article is basically kind of coming from a lens, and especially since they're trying to make the argument that like platonic relationships are just as important, if not more important, than romantic relationships, and like the emotional intimacy that can come along with it and have historically come along with it. They are definitely reading into some of these historical encounters through the lens of like pure friendship. So definitely like you can take these things with a grain of salt. But I am also probably for the most part going to be looking at this from a lens of like friendship. Because yeah, I also call my friends my queen. And I don't know, I just love the idea of like women in the olden days being like, my queen! Like you'll never guess what happened.
That wench.
In the 1897 novel, Diana Victrix, there's a character Enid who rejects a man's proposal because her female friend already occupies the space in her life that her suitor covets. Enid tells the man that if they married, you would have to come first, and you could not, for she is first. And I love that. Yeah, literally just her being like, no, I already have a friend, so you're good. In the late 19th century and early 20th century, these are just like little like historical anecdotes that I love. The social reformer Jane Addams and philanthropist Mary Rosett Smith had a deep friendship and trudged through moments they spent apart. Addams had a giant painting of Smith, which she would bring with her when she traveled and would hang above her mantle in her home. Now, were they just friends? I don't know.
Like suddenly the giant gay
Who's
fan.
to say? But look at this painting.
Oh.
Like, it's a huge painting, and apparently she brought it with her when she traveled. I just love that.
I occupy such an awkward space because I love my friends, and also this is so gay. Then I'm just like, yeah. There's something like, marry me. No.
Yeah.
You'll never come above my best girlfriend. I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
But also, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna be silent,
gnawing at your fingers. Going, yeah, no, they were just friends. Totally.
That's platonic behavior.
There was a blend of social and economic conditions that made these committed same-sex friendships acceptable in this age. Men and women in this time operated in very distinct social circles and very, like, discriminatory social circles, which allowed for deep attachments to friends of their own gender. Like, they really were not interacting with people of opposite gender, unless it was something arranged, or unless you were, like, being courted. So a lot of, like, they were spending a lot of time, like, around their bros or around their girls. During that time, women considering marriage would often worry about creating a life with a member of what they deemed as the grosser sex.
Relatable.
Which, fair. The beliefs of the time also aided to a less judgmental perception of close same-sex friendships. Historian Richard Godbeer notes that Americans at the time did not assume, as they do now, that people who are in love with one another must want to have sex. So like you were saying, like people who are in a committed relationship or like in marriage, like they weren't necessarily fucking unless like they needed kids. Yeah. Many scholars argue that the now familiar categories of heterosexuality and homosexuality, which consider sexual attraction to be a major part of a person's identity, didn't exist before the turn of the 20th century. Mm-hmm. Now, don't get it twisted. Sexual acts between people of the same gender were condemned at that time. However, passion and affection between people of the same gender were not. The author E. Anthony Rotundo argues that in some ways attitudes about love and sex left men freer to express their feelings than they would have been in the 20th century. Describing one apparently ordinary night with it, again, you're gonna be like, he is gay. Describing one apparently ordinary night with his dear friend, the young engineer James Blake wrote, "We retired early and in each other's arms fell peacefully to sleep."
Okay, a couple things. No, it's so right.
No, continue.
No, a couple things. So like even there's just something so important to me about queer history, and one of the biggest things is like, I don't know, I just get choked up thinking about it because like, mm-hmm. To know what you are despite lacking the language to describe it.
Yes.
Fuck. Ouch. But one of the other things too is like, it must have been so impossible to understand what it is that you were feeling. If you like, people deal with comp het now, mm-hmm. and it's like fine to be gay, mm-hmm. and much less if you were like, to trudge through so many layers of like what's expected of you versus what's not, versus what's allowed versus what's not. Even if you were a stone cold lesbian, like the amount of layers that you would need to have the freedom to peel back in order to really understand and accept that.
Yeah. Huge.
And another thing too, though, is I think in relation to masculinity, I haven't seen the movie yet because I know it's going to destroy me, but the movie that went out, I think, for an Oscar last year about those two boys that grow up like homeschooled.
Oh, is that the French one?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I haven't watched it because I know I'm going to want to like die, but
yeah.
the premise of it is that these two boys like grew up, and like it's an exploration of like a relationship and how deep a friendship could go if you didn't have any rules about what it could and couldn't be. I think it's Close.
Yeah.
Where it's like you have this friendship, this like deep like soul bond between these two boys, and one of them like is, I think, gay, I think is the consensus, and one of them isn't. Mm-hmm. But the conflict becomes then is like once they turn 13, they're released into the world, and suddenly people are like, oh, you guys are holding hands, and like things that you didn't like they took for granted.
Yeah.
Like being able to like snuggle and cuddle and hold hands and like affectionately like kiss the top of their heads, like just male closeness is suddenly scrutinized in ways that their parents didn't. Like, it kind of allowed them to explore that, just like letting their minds and hearts do what it is what they wanted. And then the rift that happens between their friendship is they're suddenly forced to interact in a world that scrutinizes their every little thing, and that's what isolates the two of them into being miserable, depressed, and leads to kind of tragedy. I won't spoil it, but oh my god, it's sad. But that is, I think, a little bit different. Is this hypocritical of me? Yes. But I think I see less romance, and like men would fall asleep in each other's arms too, is like they felt more free to, I guess, be dramatic. Oh my god, how many historical men are drama queens that are like crying and ripping their hair out and like fainting on top of their mother's grave because like their beau rejected their advances. I don't know. Maybe that's just maybe I have to unpack that.
So wait, so you're trying to say you see less like gay in them falling asleep in each other's arms than like the woman who took her friend's portrait with her?
Yes.
Interesting. Okay. No, I don't again, I like I said. You know why? Okay, yes,
because it costs men less to be close with each other. Like, I think that to me seems more like, you know, platonic and romantic, because if you were a man in this time and you had a wife, you could very much ignore her, and like your life you could like, you know, cuddle and snuggle with your bros, and not much would be at stake if you did end up like, you know, marrying and securing, you know, that, you know, bloodline and getting the whatever. But for women, much more was at stake if they chose to detract. That I think it must mean something more to them. Because if you were a woman and you were willing to reject a marriage proposal, that is forfeiting your own safety, the safety of you and your family, your children, and that must mean that you put so much stake in that relationship with that friend that you're willing to jeopardize your own safety. That I think it must be more, at least in my head, I read that as more important to them romantically. I guess in my head it's like, no, like you will always come before so I'm gonna say no to marriage. Like you have to be fucking rich in order to like reject a marriage proposal, because for women more was at stake if they did that, versus men, they'd be like, I don't see my wife, I hang out with my boys, and everyone's like, yes, here, women, am I right? I bet they have teeth down there.
Yeah. Okay, no, that makes sense. No, but I think it's really interesting that like, not to like defend men, but I definitely do, I think, feel a lot of sympathy for men being unable to like express themselves and their emotion, and even just like their closeness with their friends, because it is so constantly like scrutinized by typically other men. So I do think it's really beautiful that like during this time, like that was kind of considered the norm to be like that close with your bro. But like you literally just said, we're gonna get into it during this time.
I'm so smart.
Why don't you just take over?
No.
I know.
Our friendship is falling apart live on camera.
No. During this time, men could feel unthreatened by these same-sex friendships between women, because very few women were in the financial position to forego the economic support of a husband in favor of female companionship. Literally what you just said. So the author of the article, Cohen, says that from the late 1800s to the 1920s, each one of these components, gender-segregated society, women's economic dependency, the distinction between sexual behavior and identity, was pulled like a Jenga brick from the tower of romantic friendship. Journalism. Men and women's divergent social spheres began to look more like a Venn diagram, enabling emotional intimacy between the genders. With far more women in the workspace and potentially independent, men weren't so enchanted by women's intimate relationships. Sexologists declare same-sex desire, not merely same-sex sexual acts, perverse. Americans came to fear that kissing or sharing a bed with a friend of the same gender was a mark of sexual inversion. Romantic friendships had lost their innocence.
Damn.
So it really is like in the 1920s when you're seeing, I mean, obviously not fully independent, but like women are gaining more independence, that men begin to feel threatened. And also, like it states, like these social, like men and women are interacting on more of a day-to-day basis than they had been previously. So you could start like marrying for love. A few decades after the erosion of romantic friendship began, Americans' idea of marriage began to shift as well. The Northwestern University psychologist Eli Finkel identifies 3 distinct eras in American marriages. The first had a pragmatic focus on fulfilling spouses' economic and survival needs. Mm-hmm. Women needed men during that time for economic purposes, and men needed women for childcare and homemaking purposes. A marriage was a very transactional experience during that time. The second era, which was from about the 1850s, all the way until 1965, emphasized love. Finkel makes the case that starting around 1965, the self-expressive marriage became the ideal. Spouses now expected their partnership to be the site of self-discovery and personal growth. Now, of course, excluded from these structures for most of the nation's existence were the tremendous number of Americans who were denied access to legal marriage. Enslaved Black Americans, interracial couples, and same-sex couples. Throughout this evolution, Americans started relying more and more on their spouses for both social and emotional support, with friendships consigned to a secondary role. Now, this left people trying to fulfill all of their social and emotional needs with one person. People expect to pile emotional support, sexual satisfaction, shared hobbies, intellectual stimulation, and harmonious co-parenting all into the same cart, which is so much to ask of one person. Psychotherapist Esther Perel writes, "When we channel all of our intimate needs into one person, we actually stand to make the relationship much more vulnerable." By putting all of these responsibilities and expectations on our romantic relationships, we have no shock absorber if a partner falls short in even just one area. Cohen says these expectations also stifle our imagination for how other people might fill essential roles, such as cohabitant, caregiver, or confidant. I believe that we're currently in the midst of kind of a 4th wave of like our perception of marriage and partnership. Cohen says that the coronavirus pandemic, by underscoring human vulnerability and independence, has inspired people to imagine networks of care beyond the nuclear family. Polyamory and asexuality, both of which push back against the notion that a monogamous sexual relationship is the key to fulfilling adult life, are rapidly gaining visibility. Expanding the possible roles that friends can play in one another's lives could be the next frontier. I kind of theorize that with the rise of rates of divorce and people getting married and having families later and later in life, we're opening up a larger need and dependence for romantic friendships. We're not quite at the place where friendship has overtaken our romantic priorities, but I definitely notice, I think at least in like my own social circle, an acknowledgement of the importance of female friendships. I don't think we really have any single friends who are like, oh my God, I need a boyfriend right now. Which is definitely, do you know someone? Fuck.
Yeah, me, bitch.
No, you're not like that.
No, I'm not, but I yearn.
Okay, but you're allowed, okay, here's the thing. Here's the caveat. You're absolutely, like, you're allowed to want romance. Of course, everyone wants romance. Like, I don't think that goes away, you know? But I think there is a difference between being like, oh my God, I need a boy. Like, I'm not a real person unless I have a boyfriend.
Yeah,
and
that's
being
fair.
being like, no, all of my emotional, like, needs are being fulfilled by my friendships, and having a partner would be really nice. Like, it would be a nice accompaniment to that, but you don't need one, you know?
Damn, you right.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, you're like, actually, no, it's redacted. You're like, oh no, you're so right.
But like that type of person who's like, oh my God, I need a boyfriend, and like won't shut the fuck up about like needing a relationship is definitely a type of person I've come across, and frankly, a person who I used to be. What? Same. Yeah. Especially in high school. Oh my God, I was annoying. But I think that the most important takeaway from all of this is that we need a network of people at the end of the day.
At the end of the day.
It's rarely beneficial to put all of your needs in one person, and it really doesn't matter if that person's a friend, a parent, or a romantic partner. You need to have a community of other people to fulfill all of your needs. You know, you might have a friend who gives really great advice and is really great at conflict resolution, and then you have another friend who knows how to have a good time and distract you with some fun when you need it. Both friends are valuable. Both friends are necessary, and you might need them in different scenarios, but you can't necessarily expect your fun friend to give you the best advice, and you can't expect your conflict resolution friend to be the life of the party. But having both people in your life is going to fulfill both of those needs and help deter disappointment or resentment when one person isn't able to give you like everything that you need. Anyway, that's kind of all I have to say about this. I love my friends. I'm so thankful for everyone in my life. And I'm weirdly like excited to use this loss that has occurred in my life as an opportunity to learn more about myself and to build meaningful connections with my community and to gain, I think, an even deeper closeness with my friends. So yeah, that was kind of like a brief, I guess, history of like friendship and marriage and everything. But yeah, it's a really, really interesting article. They interview like specific people who have like this, you know, quote unquote, like romantic friendship with people. And it's really cool to hear them talk about it. And there are these two people who, they're both queer, and they ended up, one of them was like going through like addiction problems, and they ended up like moving into the same house together. And then they made that house into, like, a sober home for people who are, you know, exiting, rehab. Yes. I could not remember. But it's really, really cool. And then there are these two like female friends who kind of she talks about getting into a new relationship and like from the beginning being like, this person is my best friend. They will always come first, and you have to respect that. You have to deal with that, because apparently she had like a partner previously who was like, yeah, no, totally. And then like when that actually came to be true, he was like, he tried to like break them apart basically, and she was like, no, we're not doing that again. But yeah, it's a really, really good article. I'll have it linked below in the notes. Yeah, but it's been an eventful week for me. Many things have come, but also I'm like very, very excited for the future. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, cut the camera so we can kiss platonically.
I know, I did love it's so weird to kiss your friend.
Is it not? Can't we all just can't we all just make out? It's like at the same time, like, I told you I exist in this very weird space where like this is definitely something, one of my least favorite things when discussing queer history is a lot of people really do want to categorize a lot of like past historical figures and their relationships in very like current society approved boxes. And a lot of times it wasn't the case. Like on the one hand, yeah, your, you know, great aunt Helen, who never married, who lived with her best friend Becky for 50 years, probably was a lesbian, but there were definitely like lifelong platonic partnerships, and that just found it, you know, more helpful and more economically stable and like just better overall if they just continued this like platonic partnership. And that doesn't even talk about like, you know, asexual partnerships and how you can have that person, but it's not necessarily like a romantic or a sexual thing, but like it's just it's a connection that you know that they're really important.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I also recognize that I thought a lot of this stuff when I was like so deep in my own internalized closet, where I'm just like, no, I'm not in love with her. Okay, we're just like best friends, and I'm obsessed with her, and I can't imagine a life without her, and I think about kissing her all the time. But like, honestly, isn't it just like our patriarchal society that's making it think that we can't fantasize about our best friends naked sometimes? You're the freak for like even daring to. So many things can be true at once. Yeah. Life is crazy. What was that thing that you said? Embracing the absurdity.
Yeah, embracing the absurdity of life with courage.
I'll embrace it with cowardice, but life is so crazy. Cigarette lighter and the start of a mixtape.
Damn,
that was sweet.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope this spoke to you. And if it didn't, then go on TikTok and maybe find some videos that do. No, but I hope you enjoyed this one. This was a fun one for me to do. Very, very personal, but also I think like weirdly inspiring, because I'm like, oh my god, yes, I'm
inspiring,
so
not clickbait.
Not clickbait. I helped cure. No,
me personally helped to cure 1,000 dying orphans.
2 of my exes stalked me to LA. Not clickbait. No, just kidding. Like no. Yes, thank you guys so much for listening. We are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. If you want to see our lovely faces. We will see you next week, I guess. Yeah.
Bye.